This episode of the MMA Complex podcast is brought to you by HollerOckGear.com.
Go to HollerOckGear.com, register at the site, and use the promo code COMPLEX15 to get 15% off your order. It is some of the best sports apparel money can buy. Again, go to HollerOckGear.com.
Welcome to another edition of the MMA Complex. My name is James.
And my name is Josh.
And we're coming out for the biggest weekend in the UFC this year, as the UFC held 3 events in a row. With Thursday night, it was Alvarez versus Dos Anjos for the lightweight title. Then Friday night, you had the Ultimate Fighter finale, Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Claudia Gadelha for the strawweight title. And obviously on Saturday night, the big card, UFC 200, Tate versus Nunes for the women's bantamweight title. Josh and I are going to recap, well, not recap, but discuss all the storylines coming out of that weekend. And on today's show, we have the Fight Networks videographer, Wai Ting, who also hosts a review of Raw every Monday night. He'll be kind of highlighting all the stories from this past weekend and more. And a little bit, pro wrestling talk as well. So, Josh, want to get right into it, man? How are you?
I'm good. For those who are watching today, it's Monday. UFC has sold.
Yeah,
it's now been bought out by WME IMG investment group. It's a big day. I mean, coming off of 200, we thought we were gonna just talk about all 200, but the UFC just is sold now. So the UFC now is new owners. Dana White is still president. Small share ownership for him. And then you also have the Fertittas, who still have a small percentage, a minority share owner, but are stepping down as CEO. So this is big news. This is a big change. UFC 200 is not just a big momentous occasion for the sport, but it's also the end of an era and the end of the Fertittas era. And basically, I think MMA, as we've known it up until this point, is pretty much coming to an end. I don't even think there's going to be any immediate changes in the near future, but I think down the line we're going to see some big changes, and the sport may not look the same in a couple of years. So, I mean, what do you think about this big news that just came out, man?
It's crazy, man. It's part of the biggest news, and it's crazy because the sport's only been around for 16 years, and the fact that they can sell it for $4 billion is pretty amazing in itself. But what's also kind of crazy too that you and I have been fans for a very long time, and we're kind of witnessing history. As we're living in a time where we're seeing the UFC being sold, and I think you're right. I think maybe not now, but in about a couple of years we'll see changes, maybe in staff and maybe how the product is presented to the public eye. But I think this can be maybe a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe, hopefully, the fighters get paid as they deserve. Maybe the Reebok deal goes away and they start having sponsors again.
Yeah.
Who knows? But it's a big deal, and it's a kind of surreal because I'm just used to having the Fertitta brothers own the UFC, and I hope that the UFC is treated with the same kind of respect that the Fertittas had, and I'm intrigued to see how the story plays out.
It's a big deal. I mean, there's a lot that can change. Now that the Fertittas are out, that team of Dana and the Fertittas is no longer there. No. It's a big change because, I mean, even Dana himself and the way he conducts himself, the decisions he makes he's gonna have to go through other channels and other people to get some of those okayed, because it's not just gonna be,
he's not the big cheese anymore.
Yeah, he's not gonna have that, and he's not gonna have the backing of the Fertittas to back up his opinions and the decisions. So that's gonna be a big change right there. Fighter pay, I think, is gonna be something that's gonna come into question. You got unions that I think at some point will develop, sponsorships, TV deals. I think it's all gonna change at some point. I don't know if the live shows and the schedule and the foreign locations and the reach that it has to go overseas, I don't know if any of that's going to really change. I think for the most part in the next few years it's going to stay the same. But I think the level of everything is going to be brought up.
Yeah, you know what? I think that I just thought about right now was, you know, the company that kind of bought the UFC. They're located in LA, so I'm hoping we get more local shows here, or maybe a split down between Vegas and LA, which would be great for Josh and I, who reside in LA.
Yeah, I don't know how that affects them. I mean, that'll be cool. It's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be very interesting how things go out and as details come out. But it will keep you guys posted, and we'll probably learn as you guys do.
Now, do you have like a fear inside you that it's going to change too much as far as fighters and maybe some of how the fights are played out?
No, I don't think much is going to change. I mean, in terms of the progress of the sport and the size, I think it's just going to either stay at the level it's at right now, or it's gonna go up.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always, every step that the UFC and the brass and Dana and Fertitas and every step that they've made, I've kind of, I mean, just speaking for myself, I've envisioned that for the sport. I like when they made the Fox deal, I was hoping that they'll go for Fox, and they did. When they made the Reebok deal, I was hoping they would actually go for Adidas, but they didn't go for Adidas. I know they were in talks with Adidas, but they ended up going for Reebok. I was like, okay, well, I mean, it's a name brand anyway. But I think I was having a hard time seeing what's the next level, what's the next stage for the sport. I was having a hard time envisioning that. I felt like they have taken it as far as they can really go. I think from that point on, I just felt like it was just going to be just establishing itself more and making bigger stars and just kind of staying in the same area that it's currently at right now. I never really envisioned it going. I couldn't envision anything above what it's at right now. Right. I was having a hard time with that, but I think with the new management and the resources that they have, that there's possibilities that I might not have even been able to come up with. That that we might see the sport grow. Who knows?
Right. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things play out. But kudos to the owner. $4 billion is a lot of money, and to see what's gonna happen next. But
it was as much as Star Wars, right? That's what Disney paid for Star Wars.
Yeah, that's crazy.
$4 billion, which is crazy.
That's pretty insane. I mean, cause I think the Clippers got sold for $1 billion, and that's a pretty high
it's a high profile
end franchise.
Yeah, it's a high profile franchise. This is one of the biggest
I think it's
purchases
the biggest
of any sports franchise, league, whatever.
Right.
So, I mean, you got to think in 16 years, roughly 16 years, they went from $2 million bid to buy the company, the Fertitas and Dana, and then the money they poured in, and then within less than 20 years, they made $4 billion.
Yeah.
It's pretty good deal right there, man.
Pretty good investment for the Fertitta brothers. They cashed out, and seeing Lorenzo step down as CEO it's kind of surreal, but I'm excited. Hopefully things work out for the best as far as fighter pay and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But
do you think Dana will stick around for a long time, or do you think he'll kind of take like a Scott Coker?
I think he'll be there for 2 or 3 years and then eventually be stepped down, and they'll probably go in another direction once the new company is established in the sport. So
I think the next level for the sport is to make it like the NBA or the NFL, where they have the chairman, who's the NFL? It's a Roger. What's his name? Roger.
Yeah,
I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Like the commissioner.
Yeah, the commissioner. I think for it to set up like that, I think that's the next thing. That's the only thing I can envision is it's the way it's structured, the way it's organized, the way it's set up.
Maybe a fighter union down the road.
Yeah, I see it being organized much like an NFL or NBA league. Mm-hmm. I see those changes coming in. That's the only thing I can really envision. A restructuring of fighter pay and sponsorships and all that stuff. Yes, but I think the restructuring of how the organization works and the size and scope of it, I think is going to change.
Yeah, we just got to find out as the story plays out.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said on top of the show, it was the UFC's biggest weekend. I call it the WrestleMania of MMA. The UFC had 3 shows in a row. So let's talk about some storylines coming out of that weekend. The UFC lightweight division, man. There was a a big championship fight on Thursday night with Eddie Alvarez taking on the lightweight champion at the time, Rafael Dos Anjos.
Yeah.
A fight that was really intriguing, and Eddie Alvarez came out the victor and stopped Dos Anjos in the first round, and he is now the lightweight champion. Your thoughts on the fight, and do you think that with Eddie Alvarez winning the UFC belt, it kind of cements his legacy as one of the top lightweights in the world? Because he was a guy that won the Bellator belt, lightweight belt, and now he's a UFC champion.
I think so. I mean, I think this definitely, in terms of the division and just being one of the top fighters in the world, his legacy is cemented for sure. To win the Bellator lightweight title and to come and win the UFC lightweight title against a formidable champ in Rafael Dos Anjos, who's been running through people. I think for sure, even if he loses it in his next outing, I think it's still, he reached that level. He got the belt. He beat the toughest guy. Aside from maybe Nurmagomedov, who is probably arguably the best guy in the division. He's done fairly well in a short amount of time, and look at him. He's not even. He's maybe a year in, not even that, huh? Mm-hmm. Barely, maybe a year in, and he's a champ now. So it's. I think his legacy cemented. It opens up a lot of doors, and a lot of opportunities for matchups. You have Tony Ferguson, who's competing this week. You have Nurmagomedov, who's looking to get the next shot. You have Dos Anjos, who is probably going to want a rematch. You have a lot of guys in the division who you can pit him up against Alvarez, and you have Cerrone, who could always make a return, who beat Alvarez. It's a very interesting time in that division, I guess probably see Nurmagomedov going up against Alvarez next if they don't give Dos Anjos the rematch.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty surreal to see Eddie Alvarez have that UFC go around his waist. He was a guy that fought for Bulldog, Bellator, and now the UFC, and not long ago, Eddie Alvarez was, in limbo with the whole, court, but Bellator would have released him from his contract. He wanted to go to the UFC, and he was being held by Bellator, and here he is, man, now with that UFC going around his waist. I think a major factor in his career was having Mark Henry in his corner. He's become a different kind of striker, a more technical, more smarter fighter in the cage. Since hooking up with Mark Henry, I'm hyped for him. And it kind of it makes those Bellator guys look good as well. Yeah, like Michael Chandler, and because him and Michael Chandler had wars back in Bellator.
And Will Brooks
Will Brooks
got a victory over Ross Pearson. Yeah, so he's in the mix.
Right, and I agree with you. I think Don Cerrone can never beat the champ, and here's a guy that's been chasing that UFC gold, and that's the story in itself. He beat the champion. Maybe he goes back down to 155 to have that dream fulfilled, and him winning that lightweight bout. That's a story in itself. So, I mean, anytime there's a new champion in the division, that opens up a lot of doors. So I'm interested to see who's next. And I agree with you. If he fights Nurmagomedov, I think he beats Eddie easy.
I think so too.
I think and becomes the champion.
I mean, and then you look at Dos Anjos. Where does he go from here? He lost a big payday with McGregor. He ended up on a Fight Pass card on a Thursday night and loses his belt. It's not a good year for Dos Anjos for sure.
No.
It's gonna see where he goes and how this affects him going in, and if he's that good to battle back and get another title shot soon, or is this a downhill for his career? Is he gonna with all the talent that's in the division and the contenders that are there, is he going to have a hard time getting back to that belt? So it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, for sure. And also, obviously at UFC 200, one of the main fights, or the fights that were highlighted was Brock Lesnar coming back for a one and done fight against a top 10 heavyweight in Mark Hunt.
Yeah.
A fight that many people believe that Mark Hunt would do his famous walk away knockout, and that wasn't the case. Brock Lesnar came in fit.
He looked good. He looked jacked.
Yeah, he looked jacked. Very intimidating. He came in. Yeah. He took Mark Hunt's punches, took him down, and pretty much ground and pounded him. He looked strong on top. And here's a guy from the WWE world, coming to the UFC, beats a top 10 heavyweight, and now I think this guy comes into wrestling, into WWE very hot, coming off that win. He has a very large price tag, as far as the UFC goes. Your thoughts on his return at UFC 200 and where he goes from here?
I think his performance was great. I mean, it was a toss-up whether it was going to be him or Hunt. I had Lesnar going in and just felt like if he was able to get him down, it would be a long night for Hunt. But that was a tall task. But he was actually able to pull it off, and he looked good. His physique looked good. He was obviously the bigger guy. He looked fantastic. He really did. I know he's got a big price tag on his head in terms of how much the UFC wants to pay him every time he competes. He was $2.5 million just for the win and the show and all that stuff. I think just to show up was 2.5 or something like that, right? It wasn't even counting any bonuses. And I think the doors are open for him. Coming back after 5 years, which we were talking about earlier, was just insane to think that it's been 5 years since Overeem beat Brock Lesnar, and then that ended up being his retirement fight. I can't believe he was out for 5 years. It flew by so fast.
Yeah.
And then for him to come back and then beat a top 10 guy like Mark Hunt, top of the division kind of guy, it's just a testament to what kind of athlete he is. And I'm excited to see who's going to fight. I don't think he's going to fight all that much. I don't think he's going to be super, super active. I'd say maybe in the next year or so, maybe this time next year, he might fight once or twice. And, I mean, that's kind of,
Brock Lesnar is
schedule anyway.
Yeah, he is 39 years old. He's up there in age. His fight didn't show it at all, but he's still contracted with the WWE.
Yeah, that too. That's a big thing too.
So I don't know if Vince would want to risk in other days and having his biggest star lose in the UFC. I think Vince won at the end. I think during the UFC broadcast, there's a trailer for SummerSlam. They highlighted the WWE video game on the pay-per-view. That, and you have Vince's biggest star going into the UFC and winning.
Yeah.
He comes into that show hot. I think Vince won. All across the board, and I'm interested to see how they book him in wrestling, if they make him more unbeatable, because he has the right to, he won a real fight, so he's coming in really hot. Now, does Vince want to risk that again? Who knows? But I think he's a part-time fighter for sure. He's a spectacle more than he is a fighter, and it's really cool that seeing Brock Lesnar in the cage was pretty insane, and having him win was pretty crazy itself.
It was, and I think I agree with you too. I think that WWE is one of the biggest winners of this thing. They have a huge draw on Brock Lesnar, and you could say, like, when you went to go watch the fights, you saw a lot of people leaving the venue that you were at after Brock competed, and hardly maybe half the people stayed for Misha, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, people were there to see Brock.
Yeah.
And once Brock, fought, everyone kind of cleared out.
Most of the people kind of cleared out.
Kind of cleared out, and you really had the hardcore fans, there, but there wasn't that many.
I couldn't imagine if it was McGregor was selling the card and Brock was on the card. That would have been epic. That would probably have been one of the biggest selling pay-per-views of all time. Yeah, because
Conor McGregor is almost like a pro wrestler.
Yeah.
In some of his antics.
Him and Brock headlining, that would have been epic, man.
Yeah,
but
that would have been insane.
Things happen the way they happen.
Yeah.
But it was. I'm interested to see. I think it was a huge night for the UFC, huge weekend. I was in Vegas for a couple of days, and the buzz was there. I think, I don't know, it just seemed like for maybe 184 or 189, there was a lot more buzz going around it. Maybe because McGregor was such a hype machine, and you had
his Irish fans. Yeah, it's almost like a cult.
Even just watching it, I think 189 seemed bigger.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know, it was just a bigger event. I think a lot of it was because of McGregor and Aldo, but the promo was, I thought, better. I thought the promo this time around was pretty good. Just the buzz, you had the Irish fans. I think 189 was just seemed, even watching it on TV, because we were watching it on TV, it just seemed bigger.
It felt bigger.
You had Sinead O'Connor singing. It just seemed like a grander event. It was like one that you wanted to rewatch. You know what I mean? I guess you could want to rewatch this one too, but overall, I thought this was a big event, but not as big as last year.
And 189 had better fights, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too.
As far as the height, 200 had a bigger card as far as on paper, but I think the fights played out better for 189.
Mm-hmm.
So
one of my favorite cards was, I think we both agreed on this, was the finale, the tough finale.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Over the weekend, I thought that was one of the better cards, and I was really impressed with the Ultimate Fighter cast members that were on there, because I haven't really watched much of the season this past season or any of the past couple seasons, but I've seen the final finale fights, and these finale fights, they just impressed me. The competitors, especially the winners, impressed me a lot. They seem like veterans.
Well, you were there in attendance.
Yeah, I was at that fight. Yeah.
So, how was the crowd? Was it pretty lively crowd?
Yeah, the crowd was pretty hyped up, especially for the main event, with the women's strawweight. The crowd was really into that fight. I think they were really into the Ultimate Fighter, finale fighters. That whole main card was fun.
Yeah.
And you could see that, and it surprised me because I haven't caught a lot of the Ultimate Fighter, but just being in attendance, it seemed like a lot of people were familiar with who the Ultimate Fighter contestants were. So it seems like a lot of people are still watching it, and a lot of people are rooting, getting fired up for those fights.
Yeah.
So there's still some life in the Ultimate Fighter, even if I'm not watching it. It's obvious that people are. So.
Yeah, I agree. That card was the funnest card of the weekend, and the fights, played out pretty exciting, especially that main event, man.
Yeah.
Seeing Claudia kind of dominate Joanna, and after that second round, she got gassed, and then Joanna, showing the heart of a champion and coming back and cementing her place in the strawweight division, and she's a dominant champ, and kudos to her as well.
Yeah. Do you want to get to Wai?
Yeah. So earlier, Josh and I spoke with Wai Ting, who is the videographer for the Fight Network.
Yeah.
We spoke everything about this past weekend because he was there obviously working, so he gave us his perspective on things because he was there in attendance, and also some pro wrestling talk. So watch us talk with Wai Ting.
Gotcha. Okay.
Are you at home or are you at the office?
No, this is not my house. Yeah, this is our office right here.
Fanboy. I don't say, why you're a fanboy like us.
Yeah.
We get a lot of these for free, so.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
Well, for the fans who don't know, you obviously, you're the videographer for Fight Network. You also co-host Review Raw with John Pollock.
Yep.
And you're actually there for UFC 200. You're also there for UFC 189, right? With Conor McGregor and Chad Mendes.
Yes. I was actually at 194 and I was at 189. Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, 189 was a big crowd, like 200, and you were there for both events. Kind of discuss a comparison of the two events and maybe like some experience, some of the stories you had from this past weekend.
This is actually the third year I've done UFC International Fight Week for the Fight Network. So the year prior to that, it was Ronda and I think what was that card? Ronda and was it Alexis Davis?
Alexis Davis.
Yeah.
And Chris Weidman and Lyoto Machida. And so that was kind of the first year that I really experienced this big event, which, something that kind of feels like it's the WrestleMania of MMA every year. Yeah. So it's typically that year I believe they did that show, and then they did Frankie Edgar versus BJ Penn in the Ultimate Fighter finale.
Yeah,
the day after.
Yeah.
So I think it was my first time experiencing two shows back to back, and if you count the Friday Invicta show, then that was actually 3 shows plus the Expo. So that was like something different, and it was a little overwhelming then, but it was nothing compared to 189 and the Conor McGregor show. I mean, you just simply include the Irish in town, and everything changes. Typically for a week, there's a lot of 189. They did. I think it was their first year doing 3 shows, and when people hear about 3 shows, it's not just for us. It's not just going to the 3 events. It's the 3 open workouts that preceded. It's the 3 weigh-ins that preceded, and just all the events that kind of lead up to it. And I think that one was really special, even more so than 196, because it was my first time experiencing that Irish crowd. And I actually shot a video of the celebration inside the MGM right after Conor had won, and it's still an incredibly like memorable experience just being in that crowd, hearing those soccer chants. Because I'm not a soccer fan.
Yeah.
We don't really get that over here. So
we don't get it over here either.
To have like those types of soccer chants, they're like doing these like coordinated dances that I didn't even understand. You know, the shoes off thing, I have no idea what that stuff was. Well, so to see them all kind of packed into this like casino floor was like really incredible. Right. So I'll say that one still probably tops this show. This one without Conor on the card, I think, you know, the atmosphere was still huge because of everything that surrounded it. But being there, like in person, it certainly felt like the Irish added a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think with Conor not being on this one, it would have if he was on this 200 card, it would have made it even bigger than it was? I think so,
definitely.
Right?
Yeah, I definitely do think so. I mean, I think as big as Brock Lesnar is, I mean, the combination of Brock and Conor McGregor,
it would have been massive.
Yeah, it would have been huge.
Yeah. Sure. Do you think the UFC made a mistake? Because obviously it kind of backfired in the end with Jones getting popped right at the last minute. And then they took McGregor off for like missing a press conference. Do you think it was worth it in the end?
I mean, definitely arguable. I felt like the initial move to take him off for missing a press conference was just a little petty myself. Yeah. Sort of like a silly reason to take a guy off. But in the end, it'll definitely work out for them because now they have a huge buy rate in 200. And now 202, as Conor says, is like the real 200. So, you know, they have two big shows instead of, you know, just one big show. So I think in the end, it definitely worked out for them.
Yeah. You know what's kind of interesting about this past weekend is UFC 200 was kind of the end of an era. Obviously, the UFC got sold.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on the UFC being sold, and do you think we have much of a change coming up in the next few years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it was just probably a smart business decision from the Fertittas. They probably thought that, you know, the value of the company is probably the highest that it could be at this point. I mean, I think if you remember just a couple of years back, the UFC was certainly, I would not say in a recession, but there was a certain lack of star power. That's for sure, right? After like, you know, after Brock left, I suppose. And really it wasn't until Ronda and Conor showed up that they had, you know, the massive year that they did. So right. I believe, you know, like all things, like pro wrestling, everything will just kind of be, will kind of peak and then it will fall into a bit of a depression. So maybe they're sensing that, hey, this might be the best time that it'll get for the next several years. Let's get out and let's move on to something else. You know, for now, they're saying like what we know is that they're saying like things are going to largely be kept the same. And I think that's a smart move. I think you need somebody like Dana in there, not only for operations, but just to kind of appease the public, because right. to kind of take Dana out of there and to change too much too soon, I think you'd get a lot of backlash from the public. And at this point, you know, a company as successful as they are, why change anything?
Yeah. Yeah. What was the fight that stood out to you most about this weekend? Because there was a lot to go over. There's a lot of fights that happened. You got Thursday with Eddie Alvarez and Dos Anjos. Yeah. You had Friday and Saturday. What'd you take away? What was the biggest fight for you?
I mean, I love the Alvarez RDA fight as short as it was. I thought it was an incredible performance by Eddie Alvarez. But really, like, to me, I thought they're both so good. If you rematch them again, I don't know who I'd pick, because I feel like RDA just got caught. And it could have been Eddie Alvarez on the other end just as easily. But I think my favorite fight was probably the strawweight championship fight between Jacek and Claudia Gadelha. I thought that was just an incredible war. And I remember, like, we don't actually get to go out to the front because we're always in the back, either waiting for interviews or in the press room.
In the media room, yeah.
So, like, I just remember, like, the sight of, like, all the media just gathered around, Brazilian media, I mean, media from anywhere. We were actually hanging out with Tom Lawler, who had just finished cornering somebody, and watching the fight with him. Every fighter was watching it. It was just like, it was a great fight. Yeah. So I think that, to me, was better than certainly any of the main card fights on 200.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, because I was in the media room for UFC 199, and I think we're interviewing.
What? Say hi.
Was that?
Why didn't you say hi? Did I see you? Oh wait, 199.
199, yeah.
That's less.
Yeah. Dude, if I was at 200, I would have come up to you and give you a hug, man. But no, I was there at 199, and we're interviewing Jacare Souza for his scrum when Dan Henderson knocked out Hector Lombard. And Jacare, I remember him standing up and screaming, man. It was crazy. But speaking of Dan Henderson, Dana White announced that it's going to be the next fight for Bisping is going to be him and Dan Henderson for the middleweight title. A fight that doesn't make sense as far as ranking wise. Your thoughts on the fight, and do you think that they made this fight because of the story, to be told as far as redemption for Michael Bisping?
They made this fight for money.
Yeah,
yeah, pretty much.
That it's a fight I personally want to see.
Yeah,
like I don't know. Like you guys are probably. I see. I'm coming from like the perspective of somebody who just watches this stuff largely for the sport of it, but also largely for the entertainment of it.
Right.
So I'm never somebody who gets upset at fights that are made out of rank. I just want to see fights between two personalities or two people that I want to see fight. And I think to me, Michael Bisping, that's now either Dan Henderson or George St. Pierre. So I'm perfectly fine. And I think public interest says that a Dan Henderson fight will do a lot better than any of the other competitors. But what do you guys?
I'm not really a fan of the fight. I mean, I think if Bisping were to lose again, it would be. I mean, it would be bad. And I mean, Henderson's on the way out. You know what I mean? And he hasn't looked good in his last few performances, even though he won against Lombard and I think Bosch too. They were kind of lucky in a way. I think, especially with Lombard, it was a weird back elbow that he landed. I think it's just. I mean, I can see why they're doing it, but Bisping wants it, but. I don't know.
Yeah, with me, I'm afraid that after this fight, he might retire.
Yeah.
And it kind of devalues that belt if he does walk away as champion.
The GSP fight would be the same, too, I think. I don't think GSP would stick around at middleweight.
No, I don't think so either. Yeah.
But, I mean, the UFC is a business, and they're looking at somebody in Michael Bisping now. They have an opportunity and to really, propel that, I guess, English market even further and to do a huge number there.
Right.
And in my opinion, it's like those two fights. They'll be huge fights.
Right.
Yeah. So, from a media perspective, do you think that the new ownership of the UFC, with WME, IMG, is that going to change how the UFC deals with the media and fighters? You think that will change, at least from a media perspective?
I mean, I certainly hope so. I'll say from my perspective, like the UFC has always been very nice to us, at the Fight Network. I especially now that, we are kind of partners, we air some of the hard fights. They've been really nice to us, but I definitely side with Ariel and Casey and Esther, who are all our friends. Like, I definitely side with them, and I feel like it was really unfair how the UFC kind of treated them. I hope. I mean, from the sounds of it, from what I heard on Ariel's podcast, it seems like a lot of the criticism of him is largely stemming from Lorenzo. So hopefully, with him out, maybe things will be a little bit more relaxed. I hope so. But something tells me though that they're gonna try to keep as much control as they still can, and we see it all the time. Like covering pro wrestling with the WWE and how limited they are with access to their like how protective they are of their public image, and I think the UFC will kind of continue to be that.
Speaking of WWE, Brock Lesnar, dominated Mark Hunt, a fight that was really surprising to a lot of people. Most people felt like Mark Hunt was going to go in there and knock out Brock Lesnar, and now Brock Lesnar coming out of that fight, he's like really hot.
Yeah.
Do you think that the WWE should book him as more destructive, and a guy that's could come into the WWE and maybe win the belt and be that guy, that top guy, fighting from the UFC now coming to WWE, or if you're want to control the booking, how would you book Brock Lesnar in WWE?
Well, first of all, I'd have to know how often he was going to appear for us, and you also have to consider the brand split as a part of all this too.
That's true, yeah.
I would certainly try to do my best to ride this wave of momentum coming off of this. I mean, right now under the WWE's roster, they have arguably the hottest athlete, you know, certainly of today, right now. It's talked about athlete there is, who's an active member of their roster. So I don't know how I feel about this Randy Orton match at SummerSlam. I think, you know, I would do my best to make that fight. I'm calling it a fight. Match worth more. Whether it be for a championship, or for something else, I would definitely try to propel Brock Lesnar more into the main event slot for a match that, you know, will garner the most mainstream interest. Like, treat this like it's a WrestleMania match, you know, with the most attention that there's been on Brock Lesnar than there ever has been in like many years. So I would try to get him definitely towards the title picture. Whether or not I would have him win the title, I think it's why not? You know, I think especially now with like the brand split, you have another champion that you can use. Let's say maybe he becomes the Raw side's champion. And if he doesn't appear all the time, then you know what, so be it. But I feel like for at least the time being, the value of whatever championship you're trying to promote will be that much greater. I don't think there's ever been a time in pro wrestling where you've had a mainstream star be so credible before. You know, for the first time, the WWE champion could be seen as the toughest person in the world, or at least one of them. And I think that's an opportunity presented right in front of them that they should take full advantage of.
How surreal was it to see a SummerSlam trailer on a pay-per-view, on the UFC pay-per-view? That was kind of crazy.
Not that crazy, to be honest, because like I feel like, you know, you just kind of have to look at all this from a business end, and you know, it's like, to me, it just felt like a commercial for a movie that they were co-promoting. Like sometimes they. So yeah, not that surreal.
You know, I was thinking, I was picturing in my head if Brock wins the UFC heavyweight title, you know, that vision of Brock holding the UFC belt at Raw would be insane.
Yeah.
That would be crazy.
I don't know if they'd let him do that, but it would be crazy.
Yeah, that would be crazy.
Are you planning to attend any of the WWE events coming up, like SummerSlam or any of those?
Well, I just heard that Survivor Series is coming to Toronto, so we'll definitely do our best to try to get there. SummerSlam is all the way out in Brooklyn. That might not really be in the cards.
Yeah.
But if I did go to Brooklyn, I'd probably be more interested in going to the NXT show than
for sure
than SummerSlam. But I'll definitely be watching. Yeah.
You lucked out, Wai, because I think Jason Agnew had to do review Raw on a night where it was the lowest rated Raw. Those stories, I mean, like that whole food fight, like you avoid that whole stuff. So I'm
bad for him.
Yeah, I'm happy for you that they got to miss that Raw. But how painful is it for you to watch Raw every Monday? Because I always feel bad for both of you guys, and then watching review of Raw, you're always like, okay, let's go on to the next match. This sucks.
I mean, I've kind of got it down to science now, where like Raw starts at 8:00, as you know, for us over here at least, and I usually start it at 9:00 because I have it recorded on a PVR. I might even start at 9:30 sometimes if I really want to tempt fate, and then I'll just I'll blast through I'll cut through all the entrances, I'll cut through all the commercials, I'll cut through most of the recap packages, and you can finish the show in like a solid 2 hours. Wow. And I'm like, it's a kind of like a really intense 2 hours because like you have no time to break, you have no time to really even go to the bathroom, but you're just like constantly watching and digesting information. And in 2 hours, like I could do it, you know, like I'm so used to it now. It's been like a couple of years that I've done it, so it's not that bad for me now. It's a little tougher, I'll say, like watching some of the older review shows that we do for other podcasts, Review Away. Because like there's no urgency, like there's less urgency to do those, so I take my time. I usually leave those until like the last minute before I watch them, and it's like a 3-hour show that I have to try to get through late at night. But with Raw, because there's like that kind of urgency, even if it's something bad, at least you can kind of share the experience with a bunch of people that are watching at the same time. So it's actually not that bad anymore.
And do you go from your house to the studio to record
Here, I actually watch at the office.
Oh, okay.
The studio afterwards. Yeah, but John watches at his own place, which he lives very close by. But yeah, I think we prefer watching separately rather than on our own, so that we can like have different opinions and then bring them together.
Plus, you're sober too, which sucks.
Yeah. I mean, even if we weren't, I guess you'd never know, right? Have to hide it.
So, what do you guys got coming up on the next show, and what do you have coming up in the near future that you're planning?
So, Review Raw. When does this air, by the way? This
will be later today, actually.
Today, yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, Review Raw is recorded every Monday night, right after Raw, and it'll be up on liveaudiowrestling.com. You can search it out on iTunes, and that's our recap of Raw this week. I mean, we'll see what they do with the Brock Lesnar news, whether they'll discuss it, how much they'll discuss it. And then Wednesdays, we release Review Away, which is our retro review. And I believe this week we are reviewing the edition of Raw with the draft, the initial draft from, I believe it was 2002. Maybe it was 2003. I don't know. John's the one with the dates. But we're watching one of that old episode, and we'll be talking about that.
Dude, that theme song for Review Away is epic.
Yeah.
Did you do that, or who put it together?
You kidding me? We had a contest from our fans, and this guy, Colby John, he just like did this, and we were just like blown away because we didn't expect quality like this. He's an actual musician, so shout out to Colby John for the Review Away theme song. It's a lot of people say it gets stuck in their heads, and Jay did a great version of it when he hosted the show solo last week.
But yeah, Wai, thanks for coming on. It's great seeing you in the flesh rather than over the phone. So we appreciate you coming on, and maybe we ran the fans so I can find you on social media. Yeah,
you can find me at Wai0937.
I love that.
I believe that's like my tag for everything: Instagram, Facebook. I put up a bunch of photos. Everything we do here at the Fight Network. We have fighters coming in all the time, and a lot of pro wrestling news as well, and stupid comments from me if you care about that.
I love it, man. I love your nonchalant attitude during Review Raw and Review Away. I love it, man.
It's kind of necessary sometimes.
Yeah. You know what? Like I still want to send you guys out like a care package, so hopefully sooner rather than later.
Cool.
I'll send it out, and then I mean, if you're ever in LA, man, hit us up.
Yeah.
We'll feed you. We'll give you a green tea and mint M&Ms all you want.
Chicken and waffle. And Roscoe's chicken and waffle.
Yeah, Roscoe's. There you go.
Yeah. So come down. If we're in Canada, we'll hit you up. We can give us a tour of the Fight Network, man.
Yeah, would love to. Thanks, guys.
All right, Wai, you take care, man. Have a great day, and thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it, brother.
No problem, man. Thanks, guys. See you.
Peace. That was Wai Ting, ladies and gentlemen. You can catch him every Monday night as him and John Pollock review Raw. You can catch him on Wednesdays as him and John also review, vintage wrestling programs, shows called Review Away. You can go on the Fight Network or liveaudiowrestling.com to look at all his videos, all his shows, and you can also subscribe on the Law's new YouTube channel under the Law, and you can see all his catalog from there. So, thank you, Wai Ting, for coming on. We really appreciate it. It was really fun having you on.
Yeah, it was great. Always great having the guys from Fight Network on. Always fun and entertaining to talk to them, and make sure you catch everything. Go subscribe to their YouTube channel because they're constantly uploading content. It's really fun. Mm-hmm. Next up, I think we wanted to talk about you keep on the UFC 200 conversation in the weekend, and you had Nunes against Tate, where Amanda Nunes is now the UFC Bantamweight Women's Champion. Devastating fashion, defeating Miesha Tate in the first round. And what'd you think about the fight? And just watching Miesha Tate get dominated like that, what'd you think?
I wouldn't say I'm surprised because I think we both know that Amanda Nunes is a dangerous fighter, and she's most dangerous in that first round. But man, she hurt Miesha Tate bad. I think it was a one-sided fight. I think Miesha Tate didn't do anything to her at all, that was surprising to some. That would be more of a back and forth fight in the first round. She got overpowered by Amanda Nunes, and she's a new champ, man. And it's crazy to see a division like the women's bantamweight division that was pretty much built around Ronda Rousey. Now that Ronda Rousey isn't champion anymore, it's anybody's game, and no one's have defended that title more than once or at all, actually. Holly Holm lost the first time around, and I had Miesha Tate losing the first time around. So that division has become like a hot potato, and there's a lot of matchups to be played with. I think Ronda Rousey and Holly Holm would be a great fight, and having Nunes fight Julia Pena, or if you want to rush Ronda Rousey straight to the top and have her compete against Amanda Nunes would be a great fight as well. Even though Amanda Nunes doesn't have a name, I think just the fact that it's Ronda Rousey and she's coming back for her belt is a story in itself. I think the UFC has a lot of options, and so I'm interested to see where they go from here.
Yeah, the overall what happened in the fight was crazy. I thought it was a safe bet to bet Amanda Nunes. I thought Miesha Tate was the favorite. I thought she would weather the storm early on, drag her into the later rounds, and we'll probably see the wear and tear on Amanda, and Tate will come out the victor. I thought when it ended early, it would be Amanda for sure, and then that's what happened. Miesha Tate really didn't have much for her and got a broken nose because of it, and it was just a bad night for her. It doesn't take anything away from her. I think she'll bounce back, and she'll probably fight for the title a couple of times before the end of her career. And she's still relatively young too, so she's got a long time in the sport. But you have a bunch of contenders. You have Juliana Pena, who is a possible contender that they could throw in. There's Amanda Nunes, who's a champ right now. There's Holly Holm, who's fighting Shevchenko, I think next week. So we'll see who the winner is of that matchup. You have the possible Ronda Rousey return. There's so many possibilities you can play with, and it's almost like rock paper scissors with these women. One beats the other, and then that person gets beat by the other person, and it's a cycle that, as of right now, doesn't seem to have a clear cut end. I think Pena is tough. I think her ground game is rock solid, as we saw that with Kat Zingano, against Kat Zingano. I think she's a definite threat, not so much on the feet, but definitely in the wrestling department. And then you have Amanda, who's well-rounded. Obviously, the gas tank is a question. Same with Holly Holm. It's the ground game's a question for her. So it's just a toss-up, man. It's really exciting, and it's also not to mention that she's the first openly gay champion, UFC champion ever. So that's a big thing. She's one of the few fighters who's openly gay.
She's a pioneer.
Yeah, and now she's a champ, and the first of her kind, I guess. And it's exciting to see what kind of matchups they're going to have. I think a Rousey return is kind of unlikely, at least in the near future. I don't see it happening, at least this year. Maybe early next year, I think we could see her matched up with somebody, if she does come back.
Yeah, for sure. I think maybe if she doesn't come back this year, I think Miesha Tate versus Holly Holm for the number contender fight would be good, and having Nunes fight Pena, and that'd be good too. I mean, but it's interesting to see what's going to happen in the women's bantamweight division.
Yeah. So out of all the fights this weekend, who do you think were the biggest winners of the weekend? Like, if you could pick, maybe you could pick a couple of them if you want, but who do you think has come away with the weekend that's going to have a big story later on?
I think Brock Lesnar is the biggest winner. I think coming off that win, he's worth a lot more money now to the UFC, and I think he can go back to Vince and maybe demand more money and kind of like say, well, if you don't pay me this money, I'm going to go to the UFC, and vice versa. So I think he's the biggest winner. He looked great. He beat a top 10 heavyweight. So like both companies can kind of play off of that. So I think for him, he looks legit. He seems legit to the MMA community and to the wrestling fans. He's a superstar, an even bigger star. Yeah. So I think Brock Lesnar was one, and maybe two. I think Joanna Jędrzejczyk is another one. I think she established herself as the best strawweight. I think a lot of people had a question mark with that fight with Claudia, and she came in on Friday night and she looked strong in the last 3 rounds, and she left no doubt in anybody's mind that she's the best strawweight.
I think for me, in terms of who the winner for the weekend is, I would say Brock is. I agree with that one. I think Brock, you can make a bunch of matchups. You can put him on a bunch of cards, any card, and it's gonna sell. It's gonna be big. So, and any of the top 5, top 10 heavyweights you can match him up against, and it's gonna be fun and interesting, to see at this point of his career what he can do. I think that's a big thing. He's obviously the biggest draw of the card, I think, for sure. The next one I would say is probably Aldo.
Yeah.
I would say Aldo's.
Oh yeah.
Aldo's probably.
It's a good one.
One of my picks for the biggest winners, I think, because next up most likely is going to be against Conor McGregor, unless they match him up against somebody else. But even then, if they do, I don't see anybody else really in the division right now beating Aldo. So I see that McGregor fight happening, and that's going to be a huge event. I'm excited for it now. Aldo versus McGregor too, and then to unify that belt, I think it's going to be insane.
It's a better fight.
It's going to be so big. I think it's going to be even better fight than the last one, because obviously the last one was only like 13 seconds or whatever.
And he came into that fight very emotional. And he can learn his lesson.
Yeah, and I think this time around it's gonna be an interesting fight. That's gonna be a back and forth war, I think. I'm excited for that one, and the money he's gonna make, and the fact that he had such a great performance against Frankie Edgar on a huge night with a lot of eyes watching. I think it's a good resurgence for him. Because the last time people really saw him, and at least a lot of people in the general public got to see him, was that 13-second knockout.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So they got to see him actually do what he does best, and he looked probably fantastic. Probably put on one of the best performances. So I think Aldo's one of my top people for the weekend. In terms of losers, who do you think are the biggest losers of the weekend? Losers is a strong word, but who comes away with a loss or just did not look good over the weekend?
I think John Jones lost big. I think here's a guy that people kind of give him a second chance again. He's a guy that has a history of being in trouble outside of the cage, and people gave him the benefit of the doubt. And here he is. He kind of messed up again, and it cost him a lot of money, and it cost him a title fight, a fight that he probably won't get if he gets suspended for 2 years again. At the same time, I felt bad for John Jones, but it just seems like he has like a string of bad luck. And I think people are now criticizing him even more, because they gave him the benefit of the doubt, and again he looks bad in the public eye. And the fact that he's 29 years old at the peak of his career, and he does get suspended for 2 years for the USADA violation, I think it'll be pretty bad, because I think he came back recently with 15 months, like a layoff of 15 months.
About 15 months.
So having
OSP fight.
Having one fight in 3 years is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And there's 2 banned substances that he took. So if he gets 4 years rather than 2, his career is pretty much done. And it's sad because he's such a great fighter. He's probably the best fighter that we've seen in the cage.
Yeah.
But I think his legacy is going to be kind of overshadowed by his drama outside of the cage. So that's unfortunate. John Jones is probably my pick for the biggest loser, and also Johnny Hendricks as well. Johnny Hendricks is a guy that 3 years ago he was on top of the world, man, fighting GSP for the welterweight title, having those wars with Robbie Lawler, and here's a guy that couldn't even make weight this week, and his physique looks completely different. His face, his fighting style, that punching power is not there anymore, and he's become a forgotten fighter, which is pretty sad. So I think Hendricks and John Jones.
I would probably agree with you right there. I think Johnny Hendricks, John Jones, I think are 2 of the biggest losers of the weekend. I even throw Cormier in there just based on financial loss. Even though he went up against Anderson and still got to fight and make some money, the payday that he might have had with Jones was going to be even bigger. So I think he lost on some level financially. John Jones, again, can't get out of his own way. We'll see what happens with his suspension. If he gets suspended, how long it's going to be. 2 banned substances, we don't know exactly what yet. I heard Chael Sonnen today on Rogan, or at least on a couple of shows that he did some media. He heard that it was actually one of the banned substances was estrogen blocker, which that could mean a couple things. A lot of it was to increase the testosterone levels, lower the estrogen levels. I also heard from him that it might be unlikely to be actually found in any of those supplements that they might have taken to put estrogen blockers is not, known common thing, and it's also a sign of previous PED use, or at least So that's a thing, because you take that normally when you're coming off PEDs.
I don't know, like I hate to assume anything, and I know that, and I respect the fact that you're innocent to prove guilty, but you look at John Jones's picture when he was doing those heavy lifting. His physique looks,
it's huge.
He was massive, and you look at him now. It makes you think, or makes me wonder whether he was taking anything. So, and same with Johnny Hendricks, man. He was a guy that jacked too, and he looked fit. And look at him now; he's a complete different fighter as far as physique goes. So those two guys make me. It makes me question whether or not they're on something.
Yeah, it does too. I mean, it makes me question too. I think, but especially with Johnny Hendricks too, he's just not the same fighter. Especially since the USADA came into the picture, he has not been the same guy. Not even close. His physique is completely different. I know he changed camps. I know it's a big deal, but I mean, to see the decline that we've seen him, it just hasn't been good. He hasn't made weight. He hasn't made fights because of it. He lost 2 in a row. Got stopped the first time around. Got outworked this last time. Just hasn't looked good. So he's my other. I think we have the same picks in terms of biggest losers. 2 other people that didn't look good, I don't think, were Cerrone. He had some unfavorable comments about Daniel Cormier's performance, dropping some homophobic slurs, I guess, which is just not okay in this day and age, I guess.
Especially like in a public figure,
and especially to say it in public, it's just it's not a good thing. So
it's not a smart thing to do, man.
No. Another thing were the fan reactions during the Daniel Cormier and Silva fight. I thought the constant booing was another thing that was.
I mean that's kind of crazy, because
the next fight was Brock and Lesnar. Was the
exact same thing.
The exact same thing. I think not even worse.
I think with DC is like people have to assume that that's going to be his tactics going to this fight. I mean, is he going to stand and bang with Anderson Silva and get knocked out? And
or at least risk getting knocked out.
Because if DC would have got knocked out, that bout would have been bad. Yeah, that would have been really bad. So I think, except in the fight with Anderson Silva, it was as risky as Anderson Silva taking this fight on 2 days' notice. I think DC fought smart. I think fighting a fan's fight would be dumb.
Yeah, I mean, you don't go in there and fight one of the best strikers of all time, and
play his game,
on a day's notice, 2 days' notice, if that, and then play his game and throw caution to the wind when you have your whole career ahead of you, and it's just not.
Yeah,
it's not smart. He did. It's not like he didn't stand with Silva. He stood with Silva, but he played a smart game. Took him down when he could and beat him up. And I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. You just want to get the win, get out. Live to fight another day, pretty much.
Yeah, and I think people weren't booing Brock because people love the fact that Brock was back in the cage. They're kind of like they're kind of embracing his presence in the cage, so I think that's why they went booing Brock Lesnar.
So now we're gonna get into some fight picks. There's a lot to cover this weekend. We obviously just went over all the news from this past week with the UFC 200 and the UFC sale. So make sure you stay tuned for that. We're gonna try to bring you as much information from that on, especially on the next show. But we got to get to all these fights. UFC Fight Night 91, McDonald versus Lineker takes place on Wednesday night, FS1 and also on Fight Pass. It's a really good card. We're gonna touch on some of the main card. You have John Lineker and Michael McDonald. Who do you like for this matchup and to win this main fight?
First of all, I just want to say that it's crazy. It's a Wednesday card, and it's
coming off the 200. Then.
Yeah, I first off with the guys on this card, because they're pretty much overshadowed by 200.
Pretty much.
And all the other news and stories coming out of the weekend, but this is a really exciting main event, a fight that I'm looking forward to. It's a very even fight as well, but if I have to pick one, I'm gonna go with McDonald. I think McDonald is probably the more, I want to say the better striker, but I think I give the striking edge to McDonald. Mm-hmm. He's also more athletic than Lineker as well, and I can see McDonald maybe winning via TKO in the second round.
I think both of these guys, in terms of power punching and like a stand-up skill, they're fairly even.
Right.
I mean, Both of them hit hard. They're both fantastic boxers. But I think McDonald might be the more well-rounded guy.
Yeah.
And I think he might be the taller fighter. I think out of the two, if I'm not mistaken. I'm probably going to go with McDonald also in this one. I could see Lineker likes to stand and bang, but I think Michael will probably... he just seems like the more intelligent fighter. I think he'll take the smarter route and mix it up.
Right.
Tony Ferguson versus the newcomer Landon Venata, who steps in for Michael Chiesa. This is it sucks for Ferguson to take this fight against a newcomer, possibly risking a title shot even because he's right there. And almost the same situation as Nurmagomedov, his previously scheduled opponent. So now Ferguson fights Landon. Who do you have for this one against a newcomer?
I feel bad for Landon, even though he's undefeated. I think Tony Ferguson wins. I think he wins easily. I think he wins by TKO.
Yeah.
I think Ferguson, he's the best guy, or right next to Nurmagomedov as far as the best lightweight. He has a lot of. He's well-rounded. He's a heavy hitter, and he pushes the pace like no other. And I think it'll be too much for especially for Landon. A newcomer has to deal with the UFC nerves, and his first time in the octagon is going to play a big factor as well. Ferguson's already an established veteran. I think he wins this fight pretty easy. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I can't. It's hard to say because I don't know that much about Landon too. It's hard to say. I know he's 4-0 right now.
Yeah.
Tony's 20-3 against some of the top of the division in the UFC. I still want to see Tony move on from this fight, go on to fight Nurmagomedov or Dos Anjos or Cerrone or Alvarez even. I'd like to see Tony move up and fight one of those top three guys, because I think he's right there. I mean, he's obviously number one contender, is he not, or is he not number 2 contender?
I think he is number 1 contender.
He is number 1 contender, I think, right? So it's like, or is Nurmagomedov number 1, or is he number 1?
No, I think Ferguson's higher in the ranking.
Yeah,
because I think Nurmagomedov was off for so long.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I want to see him get his just due and hopefully fight one of the, at least if not the champ, the next best guy. Yeah. So Tim Boesch versus Josh Salmon. That takes place right after right before the Tony Ferguson fight. Who do you have for this one?
This is a good fight too.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Tim Boesch. I think although he hasn't looked good in his last couple of fights, I think he's a veteran. I think his striking is pretty good enough to beat Josh.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Josh Simon. I think Boesch might be on the decline. I think Josh is kind of finding his rhythm in the division. So we'll see about that one. That takes place Wednesday night. This coming Wednesday night before the weekend. You also have RFA 40, which also takes place on Access TV. Make sure you catch that. That's I think that's Friday night, right?
Yeah.
And then you have Bellator 158 London card on Spike TV July 16th. That's going to be a fantastic fight. It's headlined by Paul Daly and Douglas Lima. And you have Mitrione, the return of Mitrione against Ollie Thompson, and you have Michael Page against Evangelista Santos. Just kick off some of these guys to some of the picks here. Paul Daly or Douglas Lima?
I like Paul Daly. I mean, I was really excited for him Josh Koscheck to do a rematch, but Koscheck fell, so I like Daly.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Daly. Mitrione, Ollie Thompson.
Mitrione.
I'm gonna go with Mitrione. Michael Page is Evangelista Santos.
MVP.
I mean, that's a pretty easy one right there. Yeah. So make sure you catch that from the O2 Arena, July 16th, only on Spike TV at Bellator 158. And also, if you're in town in Los Angeles, you have EBI 7, which takes place this weekend. It's going to be a fantastic event. It's on the 17th, I believe, right? 16th. There you go. And that's on UFC Fight Pass. So make sure you catch that. It's going to be a top-level jiu-jitsu competitors. It's going to be some of the best in the business. Danny Procopos, Eddie Cummings, I mean, you name it. It's going to be a fantastic fight. If you haven't seen one of them, the EBIs, make sure you check that out. The Eddie Bravo Invitational is this weekend. The Eddie Bravo Invitational 7 on UFC Fight Pass. Make sure you catch that. And I want to thank you guys all for watching this show, listening to the show on iTunes. Make sure you follow us on social at the MMA Complex, MMA Complex Josh on Twitter, and go to themmacomplex.com.